This episode was originally released as a bonus episode of Real English Radio and is now being released to the public. Enjoy.
So I have a theory about why social media has ruined humanity, and the theory is normal people don't post. And what I mean by that is not that people who post on social media are weird. I mean that they're not your normal everyday person. So either they are talented, they're an academic, they have something they want to say. And the problem, though, is that people who watch social media, engage with social media, think that they're watching a normal cross section of humanity. And so two things happen. The first is that they feel really inadequate because people who have immense talent and want to, earn attention for their talents are going to post on social media, and it will make you feel, oh, I don't have that kind of talent, I'm worthless, which is not true. And the second problem is the, people who used to just like post letters to the editor and like crappy self-made newsletters are now able to post their weird conspiracy theory opinions on every single platform possible. And because we forget that this is a self-selecting group of people posting on here, we think that, having these opinions is normal, and they're not. So I think it's just really important to remember when you're on this app that whatever you see here, the people who post here posting is not normal. And there's a whole bunch of people who just never post on here, have perfectly normal opinions, but we don't hear from them anymore. So we have such a skewed view of like how the world works because of that. Anyway, just my 2 cents.
All right, my friends, welcome back to another bonus episode of Real English Radio. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast with your monthly subscription. Now, this is a really, really interesting topic, and don't feel bad if you couldn't understand every single word or expression that was said in that clip, because as always, or almost always, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, and I'll explain all the nouns, verbs, and adjectives to make sure everything's clear. But like I was saying, this topic is very, very interesting. The idea is that normal people don't post on social media. And basically what this guy is the topic that he's touching on, or the idea he's trying to express, is like, don't get confused when you're scrolling on social media, because yeah, you see what looks like real people saying real things, but you have to remember that everything you see online is not necessarily a representation of reality. So if you see 50 videos with somebody or 50 people expressing the same opinion, it doesn't mean that the whole world thinks that way. You just might start to create that perception in your mind because you keep seeing it again and again and again on your phone. And after you see it so many times, you start to accept it as reality when that's not necessarily the case. And in many cases, it's a bad idea. But before we get too deep into this topic, like I said, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, and I'll start to explain some of the more advanced things that he said in this clip. All right? Let's do it.
So I have a theory about why social media has ruined humanity, and the theory is normal people don't post.
Okay, so he says, I have a theory about why social media has ruined humanity. Now, you might understand every word from that sentence, but just in case you don't, when he says, I have a theory, it's just like an idea, right? He's referring to basically his idea on why he thinks social media has ruined humanity. He's basically saying, I think I know the reason. Here's my theory. Here's what I think, right? And so when he says social media has ruined when social media has ruined humanity, he's saying social media has destroyed or really, really, really damaged or degraded humanity. And he's saying the reason that social media has ruined humanity is because normal people don't post. And so the word post in this context is like upload or share or publish. Those are all synonyms for post in this context. Okay. All right, let's continue.
So I have a theory about why social media has ruined humanity, and the theory is normal people don't post. And what I mean by that is not that people who post on social media are weird. I mean that they're not your normal everyday person. So either they are talented, they're an
Okay, let me go back just a couple seconds, because he said, I'm not saying that people who post on social media are weird, but what I'm saying is they're not your everyday person, your normal everyday person. Now, in this case, every day is just one word, not two. If it's two words, it means each day of the week, year, or your life, or whatever. But every day as one word is an adjective. And it's just describing like your normal daily routine or a person or activity or something like that. Your typical person is probably another way to say it. I mean, I'm not saying they're weird. I'm saying that they're not your normal or typical person. It's not your everyday person. I hope that makes sense. So just substitute the word everyday for typical in this case, and it really is the same idea. Let me go back a couple seconds.
Post. And what I mean by that is not that people who post on social media are weird. I mean that they're not your normal everyday person. So either they're talented, they're an academic, they have something they want to say.
So when he says either they're talented, they're an academic, or they have something they want to say, the word I want to point out is academic. Because to call someone an academic, if somebody is an academic, it just means that they're actively engaged in scholarly activities. You know what I mean? They're very, what's the word I can use? Involved in research or higher education. Their entire life and career revolves around academic studies. That is an academic, somebody who spent 10 years studying at Harvard and now they have super high education. They got their master's and their PhD and they use big words and formal sentence structures and they're very, 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 very academically educated. That's an academic, somebody who falls into that category or culture or lifestyle. You can refer to them as an academic. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what's the opposite of academic? And to be honest, nothing comes to mind. It just describes a kind of person that is very, very, very involved in that lifestyle of academic education, higher education, always reading books and has lots of degrees and they see themselves or other people see them as very sophisticated because they have so much education and that type of stuff. That's an academic, somebody who's really deep in the books and the studies. You know what I'm saying? So going back to what he said, typically people who post on social media are not your typical everyday normal person. It's typically somebody who's extremely talented, like a singer or a filmmaker, a comedian, or an academic, somebody who's deeply involved in higher education, like Jordan Peterson or Andrew Huberman. And I wouldn't call them academics, but somebody might because they're highly educated. They work in universities. They have lots of information to share. They're very well studied, right? So they're technically academics. Or it's just somebody who has something to say, right? These are the kinds of people who typically post on social media. That's the idea he's expressing. So let me go back a few seconds and we'll continue.
Not your normal everyday person. So either they're talented, they're an academic.
Real quick, you might be wondering, is your phone vibrating while you're listening to this? It's not your phone. It's not my phone. The guy who's recording this video, his phone is vibrating while he's recording, just in case you were wondering. Because when I was listening to this, I had to check like twice, is my phone vibrating? But no, it's his. Okay, so let's get back to it.
Person. So either they're talented, they're an academic, they have something they want to say. And the problem, though, is that people who watch social media, engage with social media, think that they're watching a normal cross section of humanity.
Okay, the problem, though, is that people who watch social media or engage with social media think they're watching a normal cross section of humanity. There's three things I want to explain here. The first one is the word though. THOUGH, though. In this case, when he says though, that word often functions like the word however or but. It's just we put it at different places in the sentence. So when he says the problem though is that people who watch social media, blah, 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 another way of saying the same thing is, but the problem is that people who watch social media, blah, blah, blah. Or however, the problem is blah, blah, blah. Or the problem, however, is blah, blah, blah. I really hope that makes sense. You have access to the PDF vocabulary guide so you can look at the actual sentences, read more example sentences below, and see the context. And hopefully with my explanation, everything will be super clear. I just wanted to explain that because I know that word confuses a lot of people learning English. But let's continue. He says the problem, though, is that people who watch social media or engage in social media or with, he said, engage with social media. So in this case, the word engage basically just means to participate or interact with. So if you're engaging with the content, you're interacting with the content, you're watching, commenting, sharing, all of that is engagement. You'll actually hear that term a lot related or excuse me, in conversations related to social media. Lots of social media engagement. How do we engage the viewers? How do we engage the audience? We need more engagement. It's a very common thing to say. So, people who engage with social media think they're watching a normal cross section of humanity. And a cross section is a term that just typically describes, how can I say this? A cross section of humanity is like a subset of a larger population. That's like the technical definition. Let me actually read it to you. Cross section, a term that typically describes a representative subset of a larger population. So let's go back to the sentence. They think that they're watching a normal cross section of humanity. Now, when I hear that word, what I think of is they think that they're seeing a normal representation of humanity. You take a look at this tiny group of people, this subset of people, and you assume that that subset, this smaller group, represents the larger group. So the 100 people you saw on social media today, you might think their thoughts and opinions represent the 300 million people in your country when they really don't. And I think that's really what he's trying to say is people think just because you see a lot of the same thing online that you're going to find the exact same thing out in the real world when that's not necessarily the case. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's continue.
Who watch social media, engage with social media, think that they're watching a normal cross section of humanity. And so two things happen. The first is that they feel really inadequate because people who have immense talent and want to, earn attention for their talents are going to post on social media, and it will make you feel, oh, I don't have that kind of talent. I'm worthless, which is not true.
Okay, so when people are watching this cross section of humanity, or what they think of as the cross section of humanity, two things happen. The first one is that they feel really inadequate. They feel inadequate. And so this word basically means that they feel insufficient. They feel that they are not enough. You see what I'm saying? Their self-esteem gets lowered. Their sense of self-worth gets lowered. It makes them feel that they're not good enough or that they're not as good as other people. If something is inadequate, it's just not good enough. So sometimes people watch all these amazing, talented people or these smart and educated people or these incredibly eloquent individuals, and they think, damn, I don't have that kind of talent. I don't have immense talent, right? And so the word immense just means really big in size or degree or intensity. So if you have immense talent, it's this grand, great, huge, amazing, overwhelming talent. Like Lionel Messi, for example, he has immense talent when it comes to playing football, for example, right? So people will see these talented individuals and think, damn, I don't have that. I must be a piece of shit. I must be inadequate. I must be worthless, when that's not really true. And just in case you don't know, worthless literally just means without worth, without value. Something's worthless, it is worth nothing. Okay? All right, cool. Let me go back a few seconds and we will continue.
Talents are going to post on social media, and it will make you feel, oh, I don't have that kind of talent. I'm worthless, which is not true. And the second problem is the people who used to just like post letters to the editor and like crappy self-made newsletters are now able to post their weird conspiracy theory opinions on every single platform possible.
Okay, so the second problem is people who used to post letters to the editor and crappy self-made newsletters are now able to post their conspiracy theories on every platform. So he says people who used to post letters, in this case, used to is just referring to something that you did very often in the past. You had a habit of doing this thing in the past. So people who had the habit of, or the people who used to post letters to the editor. And when he says that, I believe he's talking about in what's it called? A magazine or a newspaper or something like that. Back in the day, or many, many years ago, if you were a writer, you would write your article or your expose or whatever it is, and then you send it to your editor. Your editor will make edits, maybe, and then they will decide whether or not your article gets put in the actual publication. So he's saying back in the day, people who used to just post their letters to the editor and write crappy self-made newsletters. So the word crappy is like it's like an acceptable way of saying shitty. If something is crappy, it's shitty. It's a very, very, very low quality. It's inferior in quality or condition. So if you don't want to say this is shitty because you don't want to curse, you can say this is crappy. Now it's still not polite, obviously, but it's not a curse word like shitty. You see what I'm saying? So people who used to post letters to the editor or used to make like crappy newsletters that nobody would read now have the ability to post their weird conspiracy theories on all platforms from TikTok to Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, Medium, Twitter, you name it. There's so many, right? And so he's basically saying like you have to take that into consideration before you accept these things that you're seeing as normal or common or accepted by the masses. Because before, there were gatekeepers or people who would control the flow of information on the radio, the TV, and newspapers. But now anybody can create a platform, a profile, a podcast, and just start sending their ideas, no matter how ridiculous, out into the world. So you have to remember that when you're consuming so much information online. That's what I believe he's saying. All right. Let me go back a few seconds and we will continue.
Post letters to the editor, and like crappy self-made newsletters are now able to post their weird conspiracy theory opinions on every single platform possible. And because we forget that this is a self-selecting group of people posting on here, we think that, having these opinions is normal, and they're not.
Okay, so the only thing I want to explain here is self-selecting. It literally means selecting oneself, but in the context, going back to what I said just a second ago, you have to remember that all these people you see online are a self-selecting group of people, which means they did not get approved by an editor or a boss or anybody. They don't have to ask anybody to post this stuff. Because back in the day, if you wrote something ridiculous, there was at least a chance that the editor or somebody would say, no, we're not going to publish this shit. The fuck is wrong with you? We're not posting that. But now you don't have to ask anybody. The account is free. You can upload as much content as you want for free, which means although the democratization is fantastic, I mean, the fact that anybody can create a platform and reach potentially millions of people these days is fantastic. But what we have to remember is that just because you have a microphone in front of you doesn't mean you know what the fuck you're talking about, including me. Including me. And that's the point of this clip, is you have to remember that. You still got to put on your critical thinking cap and ask yourself, where is this person getting the information from? How do they know what they're talking about? What are their sources? You know what I'm saying? How do I know I can trust what this person is saying? And most people don't do that when scrolling on social media. They see it and they believe it and then they share it. It's like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? We all do it. We're all guilty of it. But the point is, I think the point of this clip is just to remember that we do that and maybe choose a better, make like a better decision the next time you find yourself in a situation like that. Because again, the fact that anybody can post is great, but that also means that brilliant people who really have something valuable to say can share what they have to say, but also fucking idiots who have no idea what they're talking about can grab a mic or a camera and spread their message to potentially millions of people. You have to remember that when you're consuming all this information online or in the real world. In the real world as well. It's universal, right? All right, let me go back a few seconds, my friend, and we will continue with the last section of this video.
And because we forget that this is a self-selecting group of people posting on here, we think that, having these opinions is normal, and they're not. So I think it's just really important to remember when you're on this app that whatever you see here, the people who post here, posting is not normal. There's a whole bunch of people who just never post on here, have perfectly normal opinions, but we don't hear from them anymore. So we have such a skewed view of like how the world works because of that.
We have such a skewed view of how the world works because of that. Like, what a strange word, skewed. Skewed. I don't know why that word is funny to me, but he's saying it's important to remember that you see people here posting and it's not necessarily normal, right? A bunch of people who never post anything on social media, who have perfectly normal opinions, are just living their lives. They're not posting constantly on social media. So sometimes you get on these social media platforms and you see so much information. You see so many people saying the same things and you think everybody thinks that way. You see so many videos of the same kinds of situations and you think it's like that everywhere all the time. So your perception or your view is skewed. And another word for skewed is distorted. It's not clear. It's not sharp. It's distorted, as if somebody Imagine you're looking through a window and everything's clear. You can see the entire landscape, and then bow, somebody breaks the window. They crack it. And so now, like, your vision is not clear anymore. You can see more or less the image, but not as clearly as you did before. Your perspective or what you're seeing has changed slightly, which affects the way that you see things. I hope that makes sense. So if your perspective or your view is skewed, it's distorted. You have an inaccurate perspective of reality when you spend 3 hours, 6 hours, sometimes 8 hours a day scrolling on fucking social media, consuming all this information, right? And we just kind of forget how the world actually works, how most people actually are, what most people actually think and believe, especially now because I get the impression that a lot of us are talking to real people less than ever. If you're not at work, in school, or with your family, you're probably not even talking to people like that. You probably sit in a room by yourself looking at your fucking phone. That's many of us, even me sometimes, you know? So it's very important to just remember you can do that, but just remember that your view or your perspective is distorted when you're just looking at a screen and you don't even know who's choosing to show you this shit or why or where the information's coming from or anything like that, you know? And so then he ends his clip by saying, "That's just my 2 cents." Let me play it one more time.
And there's a whole bunch of people who just never post on here, have perfectly normal opinions, but we don't hear from them anymore. So we have such a skewed view of like how the world works because of that. Anyway, just my 2 cents.
Just my 2 cents. 2 cents is like, I guess you can refer to it as an idiom, an English idiom, and it just means your personal opinion, your contribution to the discussion or the conversation. And you're trying to basically express the idea that I'm offering my opinion in a humble way. You didn't ask me for it, but I would like to offer it humbly. You can take it or you can leave it. You don't have to accept it, but I would like to contribute my opinion to the discussion. So you might ask somebody, "Do you mind if I give you my 2 cents?" Or "Would you like my 2 cents on the matter?" And you're just saying, "Would you like my opinion? Do you want to know what I think?" And it's a very humble, subtle way of asking for permission to give your opinion, even though you know nobody asked for it. You see what I'm saying? So I guess that's really what he's saying. It's like, I'm not an expert. Maybe I could be wrong, but this is just my 2 cents. This is just what I think. You can take it or leave it. Let me know what you think. All right? Cool. Now I'm going to go back and play it one more time. It's a relatively short clip, and we'll see how much more you understand. And then I'm going to give you my 2 cents. All right? Let's do it.
So I have a theory about why social media has ruined humanity, and the theory is normal people don't post. And what I mean by that is not that people who post on social media are weird. I mean that they're not your normal everyday person. So either they are talented, they're an academic, they have something they want to say. And the problem, though, is that people who watch social media, engage with social media, think that they're watching a normal cross section of humanity. And so two things happen. The first is that they feel really inadequate because people who have immense talent and want to, earn attention for their talents are going to post on social media, and it will make you feel, oh, I don't have that kind of talent, I'm worthless, which is not true. And the second problem is people who used to just like post letters to the editor and like crappy self-made newsletters are now able to post their weird conspiracy theory opinions on every single platform possible. And because we forget that this is a self-selecting group of people posting on here, we think that, having these opinions is normal, and they're not. So I think it's just really important to remember when you're on this app that whatever you see here, the people who post here posting is not normal. There's a whole bunch of people who just never post on here, have perfectly normal opinions, but we don't hear from them anymore. So we have such a skewed view of like how the world works because of that. Anyway, just my 2 cents.
All right, my friend. So, how was it the second time around? Could you understand each and every single word? I sincerely hope so. If you couldn't, take a look at the transcript and the vocabulary guide for this episode and join us on Discord. You can leave your questions and comments there. I'm on Discord pretty much every day, at least once a day, trying to answer questions, interact with the rest of the community. So, if you do have questions, even after reading the vocabulary guide and listening multiple times, leave them there on the Discord server. But now I just want to go back over what this man said because what he's saying is extremely valid, if you ask me. However, there are some things I don't necessarily agree with. The first one being that social media has ruined humanity. I don't think social media has ruined anyone or anything because at the end of the day, social media is software. That's all it is. It's millions of lines of code that act as instructions, and those instructions or those actions are executed based on the actions that human beings take on the platform. You see what I'm saying? I don't think that software, lines of code are capable of destroying humanity. And I'm laughing, but I'm not doing it in an arrogant way. I'm not laughing at him or his opinion. I'm just saying that for me, the idea that software could ruin humanity is laughable because it can only do what we allow it to do. As far as I understand it, I'm no expert. This is just my 2 cents, right? But that's just what I think. I think that social media has done nothing but reveal humanity. It hasn't destroyed it or made it any worse because at the end of the day, we decide how it gets used. We decide how much time we spend on it. We decide what information we put on it. We decide what information we share with other people, what we engage with, how long we watch each video, who we follow. Nobody can force us to use social media. So if it were really destroying humanity, people truly believe that, they would stop using it, right? I don't know. I don't know. It's just what I imagine. And I think that sometimes we like to throw all the blame at other people or other things when really it's us. It's us. We are just humans are destroying humanity with the help of social media. That's the way I see it. I don't think social media is destroying anything, to be honest. And so then he goes on to say that normal people don't post and that only, extreme people with conspiracy theories or even extremely talented people or academics or people who truly have something to say, these are the only members of society that post. And to be honest, although I understand his point, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like posting is nothing new. It didn't start with social media. We've always posted or shared or published or distributed our opinions. It's just that the place we do it has changed. Because before social media, you would still share all your thoughts and opinions and conspiracy theories and talents or whatever with your friends and your family and your colleagues. It was just the people in your immediate circle, the people in the physical world that were closest to you. But you were still doing that. You were still doing that. Oh, did you see that series last time? Or did you see what the president said? This is what I think. This is what they should be doing, and blah, blah, blah. It's just now you do it on an application as opposed to at a coffee table with your friends. Really, we still do both. But I think the idea that normal people don't post is false. I think that we've always shared our opinions and thoughts with each other because that's what humans do. And that's why social media is so popular because now we don't just have to do it with people in our city. We can do it with the entire world. That is positive. You know what I'm saying? So I think posting is just human communication with another name. You know what I mean? It's just sharing opinions, sharing information, which we have always done, even before technology as we know it today existed. We used to draw pictures on walls so that people would later come by, see those pictures, and then maybe take something from that image. That is the original social media post. Hieroglyphics on walls and shit. There's literally no difference in my mind. So that's something that is so human that for me it's impossible to think that the idea of sharing opinions and information is something new. It's something that was invented with social media and it's something that is destroying humanity. I don't necessarily agree with that, although I do see his point. The point is you have to remember that most people, especially the ones with normal opinions who are not radical or extremists, they're not posting constantly online trying to gain attention or push a narrative or spread a message. They're typically just living their lives, trying to pay bills, take care of the family. You stay safe. You know what I'm saying? I guess that's his point. And with that, I do agree, you know? And so then he goes on to speak about two things that happen when people start to consume lots of social media and they think that they're seeing a representation of reality and humanity. The first one is that people tend to feel inadequate because they don't have immense talent, they don't have millions of followers, nobody's paying attention to them, so they're worthless. And although this does seem to happen, I also don't think that's a problem of social media. I really don't. I think that's bad parenting. Because if your parents raise you with proper values and the proper worldview, and they instill confidence and self worth in you from a very young age, and they teach you what you're looking at when you get on social media, they teach you to distinguish what you see from what's real. I don't see how that could lower your self-esteem just by being on social media. If you see somebody else doing amazing things and you feel shitty about yourself, you probably weren't giving something as a child. Excuse me, you weren't given something as a child that you desperately needed. A sense of confidence and self-worth, and understanding that just because somebody else is talented doesn't mean that you are worthless. Somebody else being valuable doesn't detract from your value. That's not how it works. You can both be valuable in different ways. In different ways. The person down the street working at the veterinary hospital is just as valuable as Kobe Bryant playing for the Lakers. It's just in different ways to different people. You see what I'm saying? And that's probably not the best example, but what I'm trying to say is just because somebody's talented and getting attention for their talents doesn't mean that they're worth more as a person. They're just worth more to certain people. You know what I mean? There are some people who love Michael Jackson, other people who don't give a fuck about that man. Right? There are some people who love pizza and other people who hate the shit. It's just like value is subjective. So to think that just because a million people love this person right here, to think that that means you're not valuable and nobody will ever love you is an erroneous way of thinking, if you ask me. And I think that that has nothing to do with social media, because there are plenty of people who spend hours on social media and they have all the confidence in the world. I watch videos on social media. I don't feel worse when I see another podcaster with millions of listeners and lots of attention. It's like, keep doing your thing, bro. It has nothing to do with me. You see what I'm saying? Because I'm thinking critically about it. But another person might see that and feel like shit because, damn, I only have 7 listeners. I'm never going to be there. Fuck, I should quit podcasting. That's an internal issue. Social media doesn't do that to people. You see what I'm saying? It might trigger that in somebody, but again, that has nothing to do with social media. That has something to do with what's going on inside that person, if you ask me. If you ask me. And so then he says the second problem is that people who used to just post letters to the editor and crappy self-made newsletters can now get a microphone or a camera or a keyboard and just post their conspiracy theories to the whole world, when in the past nobody would have listened to them. And although that's true, right? The democratization of content production and media and information distribution, excuse me, the democratization of all those things for me is positive. But it's a double-edged sword, because just like you can put out a bunch of positivity and information and educate people, you can put out a bunch of negativity and conspiracy theories and fucking nonsense. But you have to take the bad with the good. There is no other option. You know what I mean? But he's right. He's right that people who never would have built platforms in the past can now do it relatively easily, and they can find people who want to listen. But I don't see that as a bad thing, bro. I really don't, because the idea of right and wrong or good or bad is also subjective, because maybe somebody that you follow and you think deserves a platform and a voice and attention, maybe your next door neighbor thinks the exact opposite and that they shouldn't have a platform and nobody should listen to them. So that's part of democracy. I think that's a good thing. You have to, like, if you're okay with your favorite people being online and spreading their message, you have to be okay with people that you disagree with or that you even hate having a platform and being able to express themselves. You have to be okay with both. If you're okay with one, you have to be okay with the other. Otherwise, it's hypocritical. You see what I'm saying? So, and I'm not saying that he's a hypocrite. I'm just giving you my 2 cents, which is, yeah, more weirdos and fucking idiots and people who want to spread hate and nonsense have platforms now. But I mean, think about it from the positive aspect. How many people are now getting educated, inspired, healed, listened to, talked to because of the internet and social media and podcasts and all these online platforms. So yeah, a lot of negativity is being spread, but we cannot forget that a whole lot of positivity is being spread as well. So you got to take the bad with the good. And finally, he said it's really important to remember that when you're on this app, posting is not normal. There's a whole bunch of people who we never hear from, even though they have perfectly normal opinions. So we have skewed perceptions of reality. Now that I agree with 100%. We all have skewed perceptions of reality, but even before social media, even before we were all online consuming all this information, that was still true. Before we had the internet and computers and all that, you still had a skewed perception of reality, because people most likely never left their country. They never left their state. And in many cases, they never left their city or their fucking neighborhood. So to think that a person who's never left their city doesn't have a skewed perception of how the world works is crazy to me. Of course they do. We all do. Because we all live here on this planet, but we all have very unique life experiences. We all live in our own little version of reality. So of course our perception is skewed. I don't think that's anything new. Just like posting or sharing information, we're just doing it in a different way and on a different scale, right? It's a much larger quantity of information and a much more diverse range of information that we have access to. But sharing information or having a skewed perception of the way the world works, I think it's impossible not to do those things or have those things. It's impossible. So I don't know, man. I understand completely what he says when he says normal people don't post. I know exactly what he's trying to say, but at least now you've heard maybe our points of disagreement. And I'd love to know what you think, my friend. Once you finish listening to this episode, join the Discord server. If you're subscribed on Patreon, which you are because you're listening to this, you have access to the Discord server so you can meet with me in the community, start some conversations, ask questions, and stuff like that. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about this topic, this idea that normal people don't post, and that we all have skewed perceptions of reality, and that social media is ruining humanity. Because I understand the idea and I agree with certain points, but not all of them, you know? But I want to know what y'all think. So let me know on Discord. All right. But that is it for now, my friend. Thank you so much for your time and your attention as always. I really hope you've enjoyed this bonus episode of Real English Radio. I'm your host, Tony Kaizen, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.